Hey viewers, the Colonel speaking to you live from the Grange for British Imperial YouTube Broadcasting. So we've got a third of the 4 special Marconi records, electrical interference with broadcast reception. I'll do both sides. From the days when sort of most ordinary electric items interfered with radio signals, and therefore the radio engineer needed records like this to identify where the sounds came from. Here we go.
This record illustrates the interference which may be experienced when operating a wireless receiver in a neighbourhood where mercury arc rectifiers are being used either by private users or for the general supply of direct current. The operation of such rectifiers can give rise to a variety of forms of interference depending upon the circumstances under which the radio set and the rectifier are working. An all-mains DC wireless receiver working from DC mains which are fed by such rectifiers at the substation may give a steady, high-pitched hum as a background to the program owing to the ripple on the mains. Here is an example of reception under such conditions. You hear a hum throughout which mars reception entirely. This is recorded from a receiver working on direct current mains supplied from a 12-pole mercury arc rectifier in a 50-cycle initial AC supply. Thus a fundamental note of 600 cycles per second is developed. The pitch of this note varies, of course, according to the connections of the rectifier. Listen again. To eliminate that type of interference, a smoothing circuit must be inserted in the main supply lead to the receiver itself. The methods are fully explained on page 21 of the Marconiphone manual. In districts where the mains are supplied with direct current from these rectifiers, there may be a further interference which is actually radiated from the mains cables and wiring. Here is a reproduction of that interference without any program. Such high-pitched hum, together with irregular crackling, is picked up by the aerial and is independent of similar interference fed along the main supply lead. In this case, careful installation of the aerial may give much improved results. Listen again. When receiving a program, such interference is still present, of course, but its character may be somewhat masked, so that it may sound like this. Such radiated interference may also be caused by mercury arc rectifiers employed, for instance, to supply power to the overhead wires of a nearby tram or trolley bus system, even if the consumer's own wiring is not fed by mercury arc rectifiers. In these circumstances, it will generally be observed that the interference becomes much more pronounced when a vehicle is passing. The only satisfactory solution in such a case is for the company operating the supply plant to render it innocuous, as described on page 23 of the Marconiphone manual.
Right, on to the other side, viewers. That's not interference, that's the end groove. Run out groove, I mean. Here we go.
Small mercury arc rectifiers are used for supplying power to lift motors and are also employed by doctors, cinema theatres and so on, for obtaining direct current from alternating current mains. The interference arising from such installations is similar to that from a large rectifier, but only occurs, of course, when the plant is in use. Listen to it now. That is similar to other mercury arc interference, but you notice the crackles occur much more frequently. Listen once more and note the frying splutter characteristic of the smaller plant. These small rectifiers can be rendered non-interfering by connecting condensers to the apparatus as described on page 23. Battery charging stations, radio dealers, garages, etc. frequently employ a rotary type of rectifier for charging batteries. This type gives rise to severe interference when in operation due to the large capacity to earth of the batteries connected to the plant. Listen to what happens when one is started up during the reception of a program. Continuous grating noise due to the operation of that rectifier. Listen again. The methods of suppressing interference arising from rotary rectifiers by means of condensers and filter units are fully described on page 22. Valve rectifiers rarely give rise to any interference. When trouble is experienced, however, it is generally found that a rectifying valve is faulty and its replacement ends the trouble.
Well, there we are, viewers. Another exciting edition of that.